Welcome to Media Melanie TV. Today I'm back to talk about Maxton Hall Season 2 and preview what we could potentially see in Episode 5. Now, Episode 4 was called Secrets. Obviously, a big part of that was Ruby and James establishing the fact that, yes, they're going to get back together, but they were going to keep it a big secret. But unfortunately, that does end up coming out, which sort of foils their plan. Episode 5 here is going to be called Deceptive Lightness. And it's actually the penultimate episode of the season, which will be heading into Episode 6, the finale, called Reaching for the Stars. But let's talk about deceptive lightness. Okay, there's been quite a bit of deception in the last episode. It was obviously James and Ruby trying to deceive everybody around them and not let them in on the secret that they were, in fact, getting back together following that speech. I mean, who among us would not want to get back with James after that authentic display of being himself, putting himself out there, talking about the fact that he's getting help in therapy, but then also the whole spaghetti dinner. Now, Ruby and James did make up before that, but that dinner, I talked about it a lot in my review of Episode 4. I loved that, watching him eat the spaghetti amongst a normally functioning family, because obviously his family is very fractured. Cordelia is no longer with us. Mortimer is literally the worst dad ever, and all James wants is to be happy. His dad would prefer that he's happy with Elaine, but obviously that is not what James wants. So what is the deceptive lightness? Where is that going to come into play? It makes me think that with Mortimer coming back to the house because of this big storm, which I also think is a metaphor for everything that's going to erupt when he gets back to the house, I also started thinking, could the deception actually mean that maybe Lydia is going to warn James and Ruby and then help sneak Ruby out? And maybe they are not successful with that. Maybe they are trying to, I don't know, get her out a window or get her out of the house. And then Lydia ends up getting caught by Mortimer being the one who's trying to usher them out of there. Now, in terms of the lightness of it all, I don't know what is so light and airy about deception and who is going to be deceived. Is Mortimer going to somehow deceive James and Ruby? Is he going to pull something that potentially derails Ruby and her situation that she's now earned with Alice Campbell? But also, will he punish Lydia for potentially trying to deceive him by sneaking out and covering up Ruby and James, especially after they had that whole talk where Mortimer's like, look, you made this mistake. I've been keeping a close eye on you. You are essentially a ticking time bomb here. So is Mortimer gearing up to punish not only Lydia for everything that she's done and the fact that, she tried to apologize for not being there for the meeting, but Mortimer obviously doesn't want to hear anything of it. And he is also blaming her for not keeping this close eye on James according to their plan. So I think she's going to play some part in trying to sneak Ruby out of there or cover it up to Mortimer, but then it will become exposed that she was a part of that deception. So what is that going to mean? How would Mortimer punish Lydia? Now, there's the pregnancy situation. We still have not seen her confirm this to Mortimer. And I mean, obviously, who can blame her? She also talked to James about the fact that she's not going to tell Sutton because she doesn't want to interfere with his career. So I'm wondering if Mortimer finds out about the pregnancy in some way, whether that is Lydia telling him directly or maybe the wrong person overhearing a conversation between Lydia and Ruby, is he going to then take Graham Sutton out of power, remove him from this new deputy headmaster position, or would he somehow force Graham and Lydia to end up being together? I can't see that because that would be quite the scandal. Like Lydia said, it's one thing to excuse a one-night stand, but it is a whole nother situation to excuse a familial relationship with a professor. But because we have this theme of Mortimer wanting the Beauforts and the Ellingtons to merge in some way, whether that is with James and Elaine, or now that we know Frederick, the other brother to Alistair and Elaine, shows up at that white party, could Mortimer somehow, I don't know, bribe or convince the Ellingtons to pair Lydia and Frederick together so that way they can raise this baby? But obviously Frederick would realize it's not his child. Obviously he's never been with Lydia. So how would they even play this off or convince somebody to take responsibility for the twins? Now, Is it also mirroring the fact that, like I've been talking about, this could mean that Mortimer maybe is not the actual father to James and Lydia, and that's been a big cover-up? Could this be the next cover-up? I did a theory video on the fact that I do think Percy could potentially be the twins' father. So if this is a callback to that scandal, the conversation Cordelia had with James about a love she once had and doing the right thing for the family, now that may or may not mean that, in fact, children were conceived between Cordelia and Percy, but here it is just leading me to believe that it's no coincidence that Lydia is pregnant with twins because she's a twin. Okay, maybe it just runs in the family, but how are they going to reconcile that? We've known about this pregnancy since season 1, so if in episode 5 we still don't see any furthering of the pregnancy plot, I'm just going to throw my hands up, because with only 1 episode left of the season, I realize a lot of time hasn't actually passed between season 1 and season 2. So, I mean, by all accounts, this pregnancy thing hasn't really been on the table for a long time. But for us as viewers going into the end of a second season, it feels like a long time. And at least I would like some kind of reconciliation or big reveal to propel us into season 3 and create this extra dramatic tension between Lydia and Mortimer. But I also think that Mortimer, if he does end up catching Ruby and James, and again, maybe this deception is the fact that Ruby and James get away, maybe Mortimer doesn't catch them together. But what if he does? What could he possibly do to punish Ruby and James? James just had his next interview at Oxford. Would Mortimer go as far to derail James getting into Oxford? Because we know Ruby is going to go there now. She's getting the scholarship from Alice Campbell, getting a part-time job. Would Mortimer potentially make it so James doesn't get into Oxford to keep them apart? Now, I don't know that he'd want to necessarily take away from the prestige of a Beaufort going to Oxford, because that's what he should be doing. Go to Oxford, marry Elaine, blah, blah, blah. Could he potentially interfere with Ruby and her scholarship and make it so maybe Ruby can't go to Oxford and then she has to, I don't know, slum it at a local college or something? But now at the same time, it seems like it's probably too late, because they've already applied to Oxford. They've already had an interview. So let's say she can't go to Oxford. Like, what is the next step? Is she going to have to work at her family bakery? Is she going to be thrust in a very blue-collar life because Mortimer just cannot stand to see his son with A, woman that he loves, but B, somebody who's not necessarily up to their social status? All right, before I get more into the episode 5 preview, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'm here with 3 videos a week, all during Maxton Hall, and yes, it is kind of a short season. We got a 3-episode premiere, 6 episodes in total. So again, episode 5, it's going to be the penultimate episode. So I hope you stick with me for all the rest of the Maxton Hall content. I'm also talking about It Welcome to Derry on HBO. If you like horror, I highly recommend that. Fallout, I will be covering when that comes back to Prime Video next month, right here on the same streaming service. And also, I am talking about television every Friday in an Instagram Live. It's called Weekend Watch, so be sure to follow me on Instagram at MediaMelanie so you don't miss my content there as well. Okay, back into what we could potentially see for episode 5. Now, everything that we've seen so far in trailers and teasers for season 2, and even in a lot of the promotional photos, we've already seen a lot of what they're offering us, but they are releasing photos at the last minute. For instance, last week before episode 4, they put out the photo of James eating the spaghetti on the Maxton Hall subreddit. Maybe something big is coming in episode 5. Like I said, we still haven't had the reading of the will, something I mentioned in my review of episode 4 as well that someone pointed out in the comments. I mean, are we even sure that Cordelia actually died of natural causes? Now, in the book, yes, it was a stroke. They told us it was a stroke here. Maybe I'm creating an extra level of tension, but I don't know. Could it be nefarious? Could Mortimer have had something to do with her death? Or could she have even potentially taken her own life because she was so unhappy with being in this family and being under the thumb of this terrible husband who's not even like the Beaufort in the relationship? But with her being gone either way, and Ophelia, her sister, showing up to the funeral despite having been out of touch with the family, I was thinking in episode 4 we were going to get the reading of the will. It's got to be in episode 5. We've got to hear something about how the power dynamics could potentially change now that Cordelia is gone. Does that mean Mortimer could be thrust out of of power? Could that install James and Lydia in positions of power? Or I don't know, could Ophelia now become the head of the Beaufort company and be the one in charge and then end up firing Mortimer? Or is Mortimer's role in this company protected because he was married to Cordelia for so long, and by the time that her life ended, they were still in a marriage together? But if Cordelia changed the will and Mortimer didn't know, I mean, you never know what could be coming. And let's say something does happen. What is Mortimer's reaction going to be? I'm thinking Mortimer's going to have to punish Ruby, James, and potentially Lydia, but is there going to be a punishment for him for having been this terrible father once this will does come out? Are we going to see a very satisfied Ophelia coming back and being like, hey, bro, you shouldn't have been such a jerk to my sister. You shouldn't have kept me away from these kids for so long. Could the big secret be coming out that Percy's the father of the twins? And maybe that causes Mortimer to break down. But just going back to the title of episode 5, Deceptive Lightness. Obviously, there's going to be some form of deception. Maybe it has to do, like I said, with James and Ruby sneaking out. Maybe the deception comes from the will, and there's going to be this airy lightness after that deception is revealed. And maybe Cordelia was deceiving Mortimer this whole time. And I don't know, let's say she did end her life. Maybe this was a way to put the kids in power and take that away from Mortimer. But at the same time, that seems like a pretty harsh reason to want to end somebody's existence, and I'm hoping that's not it. By all accounts, she probably passed away from a stroke like they told us, but you can never put it past TV adaptations to take creative liberties, because for television, sometimes you need more layers, more evil storylines and plots. So, I mean, you never know. Even the fallout from the white party with Elaine, what is going to be next for her? She obviously tried to spike the drinks that ended up with Lynn and Cyril instead of with Ruby and Lynn, or Ruby and James or whatever. What other lengths is she going to go to? Could Elaine end up going to Mortimer? Let's say she overhears something about Lydia's pregnancy. Is she going to be a part of the reveal for the pregnancy? Lydia is obviously keeping her eye on Elaine. She texted James in episode 4, like, hey, Elaine's got you on her radar. So Lydia has a vested interest because she loves James. James loves her. They are twins. They're very close. And like James said, the only thing that really matters to him is Lydia and the twins and Ruby. So I'm wondering how Elaine will play into all of this. If she feels entitled to the fact that she should be the one to end up with James, what further lengths will she go? Because first of all, like, putting substances in somebody's drink in order to make them act a certain way, never okay. Consent is important with literally anything, especially what you're putting into your body and not knowing that something was put into your drink. That is like one of the worst things I think a person can do to anybody. So if she's willing to do that, what other lengths is she willing to go to? Like Alistair said too, like, jealousy is a pretty tough thing. So she either needs to get over it, or I fear that maybe she will be part of some deception in this whole title of the episode 5, Deceptive Lightness. Now, speaking of other deceptions, we heard Lydia say she's not going to tell Graham about the twins. So there seems to be deception coming from all sides, essentially, at this point as well. So I don't know, between the punishment, between the deception, with only 2 episodes left in the season, like, what do you guys think we will see in episode 5? Will it be the will reading? Will it be Lydia's pregnancy finally coming to light by Mortimer? Or are we going to see some other barriers coming into play that maybe none of us are going to see coming, because they are doing a good job of keeping a lot of these plot points very secretive, and as they should. Nobody likes spoilers. I don't like spoilers, but I do like coming on and theorizing and speculating about what we could potentially see in the next episode, just based off the context clues that we have now. But overall, just based on what we saw at the end of episode 4 with a big storm coming in, which again, I do think is a big metaphor for everything that's gonna hit the literal fan once Mortimer gets back to the Beaufort house. But what if Mortimer doesn't even catch them? What if this is all one big cliffhanger, but then we are going to be deceived as viewers because he ends up not catching James and Ruby? So I'm really curious to see how this is going to pick up. Is Mortimer going to turn around? Is he going to go back to the house? Is he going to catch James and Ruby red-handed? Is he going to catch Lydia trying to protect James and Ruby and then punish her and in turn punish all 3 of them? Or is Mortimer going to be the one who's finally punished because we may get the reading of the will and we find out either some big secret, such as he's not the twins' father, or he's going to be taken out of power within this Beaufort company somehow. And that said, are we going to get more Ophelia as a main character heading into season 3? So we have some sort of supportive female presence for both Lydia and James. And maybe she'll be supportive of Ruby as well. And maybe she'll be a voice of reason to Mortimer, like, hey, why are you forcing your son to be with this girl Elaine, who first of all is like complete garbage? I mean, on TV shows, yes, it is presented in ways that make it seem like there are these forced pairings for somewhat of an arranged marriage. But I hope in today's day and age, I mean, obviously I hope, first of all, Ruby and James are endgame, but obviously I know that it can't just happen because we have a whole nother season. There's going to be a lot of other roadblocks along the way for if they are endgame, like we saw with Belly and Conrad in The Summer I Turned Pretty. It wasn't easy for them to get together. It's not been an easy path for James and Ruby, and a lot of that is because of James's self-destructiveness. But one constant that we have seen this whole time is Ruby holding her head high, being proud of who she is, being very good at what she does, and given these different opportunities. But like with James and Ruby getting back together and wanting to keep it secret, I said to myself, this can't last very long because we can't just have like champagne and butterflies heading into the last 2 episodes of this season. So I'm thinking, obviously, this just can't be that easy for Ruby. All of her dreams are going to come true. She crushed this event. Now she's going to get a full scholarship, a part-time job. Everything is great. Oh, and hey, while we're at it, maybe we should have the Beauforts buy Ruby's family's bakery back. That's something I said as well that I hope happens. You know, obviously not probably here in season 2, but potentially something we could see for season 3. And I am wondering, I have not read the books. Does this have a happy ending in the first place? I don't want to be spoiled on the ending of the books, but I would like to know, like, are James and Ruby endgame? Don't tell me. Please don't tell me if you've read the books. I think they could also sort of vary it. But I'm hoping that they are, because this at its heart is a love story. And there is nothing I want more than to see these 2 characters together. If it is a James and Elaine endgame, you guys, I completely revolt. So stick with me for more Maxton Hall videos. I've got reviews, I've got theories and discussions, and next episode previews like this one. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? What do you want to see? How do you think the season's gonna end? Share all of your thoughts down below, and I will be back again very soon with more TV talk. Media Melanie, clicking off.